Joel, sorry, man, I pushed you right into the live, but I think it was
No problem.
You see, that's the interesting part. This was my technical mistake that turned into like an unplanned live.
An introduction.
This was another crazy week, right? So I pinged you, I think, I don't know, like yesterday, I guess, and I said, should we actually do a live? And I'm glad you said yes, just because
There's a
we
lot
never,
going on.
yeah, a lot going on as usual. But yeah, I know, like a lot of always doing live formats. Eventually, they end up doing daily stuff, and I know we have so much going on, so we wouldn't be able to do that. But it's funny because again, we never miss the important news, I would say, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the most important. I mean, that's the value of something like this. There are so many news going out everywhere, and so many news are used to push a certain agenda, like whether it's people who want to push fear against AI, or you want to push, hey, AI is going to solve all the world's problems. And it's helpful to have a balanced view in the middle.
Yeah. Great point. And that's the whole reason why we're doing this, is to trying to have like a nuanced conversation, which doesn't want to go too much on the optimism without a bit of a skeptical view. And then, of course, on the other side, on the pessimism, to just do like a bit of clickbait, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's funny because, again, if you go over optimist right now, I think you're going to be loved by the niche tech community. If you go over pessimist, I think you're going to get a lot of press exposure. And both ways, it's interesting, but as long as we keep it nuanced, I think it's good for everyone. It's also great to do discussion. And I was I'm going through all the Q2s. That's why you see me so strained as well, because I'm outside my daily work and everything. I'm also going through all the Q2 releases. And I have to say, one interesting thing, of course, is it has become like very hard to analyze things without getting personal. As an example, right? I like the example of SpaceX. Maybe we're going to touch on it. SpaceX released the first quarter. Of course, we can argue that when SpaceX IPO, maybe was overpriced at the IPO, and also in the short term, of course, it popped, like meaning it went down by a lot. And that's true in the short term. However, again, we need to ask a proper question: where is the long-term opportunity that we see there? But then, on both sides, given that, of course, the founder of SpaceX is quite controversial, you never get like a straight opinion, like not opinions, like straight analysis that looks at, okay, but sure, short term is overvalued, whatever, but what is the long-term prospect? What is the proper business model approach? How is this developing, not now, but again in the next like 5-10 years? So that's the perspective that we try to take, right?
Yeah no, that makes sense.
All right, so should we get going? I mean,
we can get
let's
started.
see how far we go, but again, the title of the live, it was about Google, and we'll get there, right? Because it's kind of crazy, but maybe I would say a good way to start is that right now there is an earthquake, not a real one, but again there is there's been like a news that was just released, I believe, maybe this morning, like a few hours back, by the Financial Times, that actually is going to be, if Kimi, DeepSeek were like crazy moment for the AI ecosystem, imagine what this is going to be. And the news is apparently the ByteDance, of course, which is the owner of TikTok, but outside that is a huge tech Chinese conglomerate that internally has a very powerful AI lab as well. And I think part of this lab is led by also a guy who used to work at Google DeepMind. is apparently working on a huge model, which is like a 10 trillion parameters model. Now, for quick context, where we are right now, close frontier like Anthropic, OpenAI, when they release a new model, they're not sharing how much parameters those models have, right? But by some estimates, we know that we are moving more and more into like the multi-trillions parameters, meaning that not only those are like models that have very strong reinforcement learning and post-training approach, they also are quite big in terms of parameters. So we never stop scaling the pre-training side of AI. That's a very important reminder. And for context, most probably 10 trillion parameters is most probably the scale of a Claude Mythos, right? I'm
Mhm.
putting it right here. And if you remember, like we discussed in our previous live, Kimi K3, and again, it was almost 3 billion parameters. It was an incredible model. We discussed about the distillation thing, but also the variation of attention that they brought in. But especially another key component is that they managed to actually make it quite sparse, meaning that they managed to actually bring into the same very large model hundreds of mixture of experts that make the model way more powerful and specialized at the same way. And the interesting thing here, though, I would like to point this out, and then let me know what you think. The real let's say, turning point here is that the reason also why for ByteDance is taking quite some time to actually train this model. It seems they're actually not distilling. It seems that for the first time, they may be actually doing something else. They may actually creating their own thing by scratch. And if that's the case, that is going to be quite interesting to watch, right? It's going to be like a big shakeup, possibly.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting because you have what is the golden resource today? It's data. How much do you have? So where are those 10 trillion parameters coming from? When you think of Grok and everything Grok is doing, it has access to an unlimited library of posts on X. That that comes from journalists, that comes from researchers, that comes from each one of us. And I think something similar happens with ByteDance where regardless of my personal thoughts on privacy and on everything that China has to get data on everybody in China at all
Mhm.
times. That is data that the United States, for example, does not have on all of its citizens. And they have so much data on people, on how people move, on how what people do, that I think just using that data can easily get them to the ten trillion. Similar to what Tesla has. I mean, Tesla has such an advantage because every single time somebody drops a Tesla, it's collecting more information to add to their training. So it's going to be interesting to see how the model performs. I like that you have a disclaimer on there though that parameters and pre-training amount does not equal capability.
Of
So
course.
interested in keeping up with it.
Yeah,
We'll see.
actually, you raised so many interesting points that I think we could spend the whole live on those. And I'm glad you did because again, just to reiterate on those points that you discussed, and you opened like a Pandora box for me because now I could go on for like 1 hour, but I cannot. I need to put a break. But yeah, culture wise, it's really important what you said because. It's a key point right now with ByteDance. You can gather data, also like I guess video data. Like you have all sorts of like interesting video
Yeah.
data that is going to be very important. Which means now you can maybe train like a model which is multi-model by ready on the pre-training side, which is going to be very interesting to watch and very critical. Number two is also like the culture element of it, right? Because let's not forget that right now when you distribute an AI model, what you're doing is also creating like a dependency on that culture. Think of it like
Mhm.
web culture is American culture,
Yeah.
right? Because for better or worse, that's what it is as well, right? So having a Chinese AI model that can be so powerful. It's going to be interesting to watch because it's the first time that maybe we see such a thing. And the other point that you raised that is spot on is just like X right now. I did an analysis on the SpaceX, right, on the SpaceX side this week because again, for me, it was so nice to put the hands on the financials that now are public, and it was the first financial release I did after the IPO. And if you look at X, right now X is, if you look at it from a purely financial perspective, right now X is maybe like a failed company because they make like 100 million, I believe. I don't want to say, wrong things here, but I think it's like 100 million in ad revenue, right? I remember that when this was acquired, I think it was like a 2-3 billion ad revenue company, right? So it's absolutely down. However, again, what is X? X is the data pipeline for
Exactly. Exactly.
SpaceX AI, and
Yeah.
combine that with the human capital that now you have with the Cursor acquisition, the traces that you got from Cursor, and that's how you get the new very powerful Grok. Indeed, Elon Musk in the earning call actually said very soon you're going to get a new model that's going to go after the post 4.5 Grok. It's going to be very, very powerful model. We'll see what comes out, but there is another key point. And then I'll stop it here because you said even another interesting thing, which is also the Tesla data. It's actually quite instrumental, and that's totally true because right now what's powering the AI that is powering Tesla is actually Grok in many things. And
Yeah.
as you can imagine, all those things are coming together. Indeed, in my last analysis, I actually posed a bit of a rhetorical question, which was, is SpaceX swallowing Tesla? And the main point was outside the fact that there is news that is becoming more and more actually real. It seems that, of course, Elon Musk wants to merge everything under the same group. So even Tesla, of course, there are a lot of things that need to happen before we get there. But it seems that, for instance, he's dismissing part of Tesla in China because now he's trying to create like a condition where he can merge the two. And if that happens, he got the whole vertical integration ecosystem that would be quite interesting to watch. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't thought of that specifically on TikTok, but think of how much data is coming in every single day through TikTok. That's completely owned by ByteDance.
Crazy.
So yeah, that's it's not a wall that Anthropic has hit and ChatGPT have hit, but they don't have access to the kind of new data pipelines that these companies have, or even Google. I mean, owning YouTube and the amount of information that comes through YouTube. I don't know. Maybe Anthropic will put a bid for Substack at some point to try to get more data in its own pipeline.
Yeah, and you said it, man. You're raising points that will make us not move to the next point. But all right, let's get to it because I think your YouTube point is quite interesting. But I think we can touch it in the context of the Google news because again, the other key news. And let me do a bit of screen sharing here as well. It's the news that we were ideally using as opener for this live, but then again we changed because the news just came out of ByteDance model. If you followed, of course, the most maybe important news of this week has been the complete reorganization of Google AI leadership, and this is a second code red. If you remember, I think 22 Google had to call code red internally because, of course, OpenAI ChatGPT was advancing so fast. And if you remember, the first play that ChatGPT was trying to dominate was the consumer play. Little they knew that this is not the time where you build the next Google by being a consumer company. Actually, you do it by being an enterprise first company, which was what Anthropic shown to OpenAI. And then OpenAI had to completely change its own strategy and have its own code red internally, which happened like a year and a half back. But again, the interesting thing here is there's been a total shakeup of the leadership at Google AI, and two things are happening in parallel that maybe are completely connected, and we see how this plays out over time. Number one, of course, Jeff Dean, who is pretty much been the person who's built, I think, half of the company tech, right? Has
Hmm.
been with Google for I don't know, I remember, I think almost like 30 years, 27 years. And now Jeff Dean, which is the engineer's engineer, as they call him, because again, he's really the most trusted person, and also like super respected in the tech industry. He left to actually found his own company called the Discovery Loop, which is going to be looking at automating the self reinforcing AI, which is what everyone is working on at the moment. If you remember,
Hmm.
when Andrei Karpathy, former OpenAI, former Tesla, joined Anthropic and is still Anthropic, is because now they're working on continual learning, which is going to be next phase of AI. And in parallel to that, of course, also Demis Hassabis, who was the CEO of Google DeepMind, that then became like Google AI, has stepped down, meaning we can discuss the implication. Again, he stepped down from the operating part, meaning he's not going to have day-to-day management, but he's going to focus on the long-term implication of AI, right? That's where we are at the moment. Not sure if you have any takes, and I'll hear yours, because then I guess you're gonna make me talk for the whole hour. So
Yeah. No, I think anytime a company has a reorganization of top leadership like this, it shows that they are not content with where they're going, and they feel like they need to make changes. Because if you're ahead, you don't want to break what's getting you there. But I feel like they understand they need to make some changes. And the other thing is the amount. If you have an engineer in one of these teams that is remotely unhappy with their position, or Oriole, for example, who wants to start looking at more scientific and medicine based AI, these companies, Anthropic, Meta, they're all throwing money at all the top engineers at each other's companies, and they're getting them left and right. You have some of the top AI researchers jumping from lab to lab. So think of all the, I mean, I understand that you have NDAs and you can't reveal some of the key information, but all that knowledge that they've acquired, all of a sudden you have that in your company and you can use it.
and as long as it's in your brain, you can legally port it
Yeah.
anywhere. So
Yeah.
and it's a great point, because right now as well, like human capital, one thing's for sure is like human capital is still like the most important factor
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
in uh, in AI.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
going to be
yeah,
interesting to see how this pays off, whether it's a knee jerk reaction or it's, I mean, Gemini started off really shaky and a lot of public failures, and I feel like they have found a really good niche with, um James says he can't hear us. You can hear me, right?
I
I can
can,
hear you fine.
yeah, I can hear you as well. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see,
yeah.
how this shakes up, because Gemini with Notebook LM and the whole Google AI ecosystem is pretty
Mhm.
strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are like a few interesting point here. Um, so again, this week, couple of weeks back, when I analyzed the Q2 for Google, was quite clear that
Mhm.
Google is probably the most impressive play in the AI space right now, because if
Yeah.
you look at it, it's probably the most vertically integrated company. However,
Mm.
I also pointed out in my analysis, I called it the TPU dilemma, which is when you change at the same time the way the company operates at financial level, operating level. For the first time, you change a fundamental assumption, which is whatever resource we build internally is going to be only for internal use. You create, and I share it here as well, you create what I called here. Let me go right here. The queue, right? The queue is
Mhm.
the process in which when you start uh, selling to the outside world, and this case is the TPU, right? When you start selling on the outside world, one which is probably the most important asset that you got right now, which is the compute and the TPU that you have. You do create very weird scenario where you're doing the right thing. This is like classic innovator's dilemma playing out, and uh, uh, it's quite interesting to see because again, on the one side, it totally makes sense because if you Google right now, you can build NVIDIA. I already said this a couple of years back. I was like, guys, if Google starts selling its TPUs, it's going to be NVIDIA in no time, right? So, of course, if you assume that in a few years, uh, the most important thing is still like compute, then you see a company that is going to be worth like trillions of dollars just for that. So it totally makes sense, right? And then on the other side, you have this tension. You have the TPU. For the first time, you start selling an asset that you build just for internal purpose because you've been for your entire life a consumer business, and that's what defined your DNA. You start selling to the outside customer, which is an enterprise customer, and there is
Mm.
also a customer that is competing with you on the frontier AI side because your main customers are Anthropic, OpenAI, SpaceX.
Yep.
So it's a very weird dynamic, right? And so, in a way, if you're a Google Cloud, you want to keep pushing as much sale of TPU to the outside world, and this creates like a conflict at different levels because let's remember, Google is still like a consumer business. Uh, that's its DNA, but in a way, in the next decade, we'll see Google becoming a different company, for better or for worse. Maybe still like super successful, still like a next Nvidia, whatever. But we'll see what happens. But again, you have a TPU, you got a queue. Before it was all allocated internally between like research, right, and then inference, internal inference. Right now, you get research, internal inference, and external inference, and that creates maybe a conflict that is very hard to fathom because now you need to change the strategic direction of the company. Um,
Yeah.
those are like a few points that maybe are important to note.
Yeah. I mean, as a disclaimer, the two biggest individual companies that I invest in are NVIDIA and Google, which is funny. But I do think Google's positioned to to really go in almost any direction that they want to go. Whether they do it successfully is another thing. But I think NVIDIA, everybody understands in order to be vertically integrated, we need to make our own chips. That's why every other week you have some kind of news about Apple's developing its own chips and Meta is developing its own chips. I
Yeah.
think if anybody can do it successfully, Google and Microsoft are probably the two most well positioned to do it. I don't know if they can, but I do think that's why. I mean, one of the news that you have on the slide deck is NVIDIA is making a deal with SpaceX
Yep.
because they're trying to make sure, hey, regardless of what happened, we want to be set up for success.
Absolutely. Let's get to that. I think it's a good pivot. And also, a last thing I wanted to highlight on that. Again, uh, also Demis Hassabis right now. Let's remember that is stepping down from the operating role. But even
Mm.
when you look at Anthropic, there were like different discussions on X that were quite interesting and spot on the point. Like if you look at Dario Amodei, he does not have. Any reports, like because he's focusing both on the business and on the long term. And now you got Demis Hassabis, who is focusing on what's called Isomorphic Lab, which is the spin-off
Mhm.
of Google that looks at the AlphaFold, and all the biotech side that maybe it might be where we see AGI first, right? I mean, again, this is not standing on long-term perspective also on Google being able to fast innovate compared to others is more like putting a man like a Sabis on the long-term focus
Mm.
while Google still needs to figure out in the short term through its business model, existing one, where it goes. And
Yeah.
last news is also Sergey Brin is coming back maybe on the more actively on the leadership because one of the people that they
Mm.
picked for the new role to to lead as well the Google AI part is a guy who's very close to Sergey Brin. So interesting
Yeah.
things. We'll see how
Yeah. By the way, Demis Hassabis just came to mid July. Just came to Substack, so you're going to be seeing Demis on Substack.
nice. Glad to see. Yeah, great stuff.
I just dropped the link there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and it's one of the reasons why I moved. London was it was an analysis done of the
Yeah.
prospect of Demis Hassabis capability of lead the AI ecosystem. So I'm a big fan of
Hmm. See
Demis'
if you
work.
can get him in the next AI Supercycle. We'll have a conversation.
There will be a big hit, but let's dream. But let's see where we get. And yeah, the news that you pointed out is spot on as well because this was something I was listening to the Q2 releases again. There was the classic Q&A session that you have where people were asking things to Elon Musk. And
Hmm.
the interesting thing is that something almost downplaying it, like, we're going to be using NVIDIA as the main partner. Of course, he put it in a way to say, of course this is the best architecture. So it's interesting to see that SpaceX, who is the champion of vertical integration all around, is actually relying on NVIDIA, at least for the foreseeable future, meaning the next 5-10
Hmm.
years, for its cheap infrastructure. Was big news to me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and like a quick one on that. Just I spend another minute because I think it's important to understand also the main reason why. Let me show you this one that was part of one of the analysis. If you ask me again, the ecosystem evolves. Of course, there are like technical aspects, but there are also like alliances that are forming.
Hmm.
Some alliances are also due to the way a business model is structured, but also to the personal preferences of the leader, and then on in some way also structurally consistent with the strategy that you bring forward, right? So if you look at SpaceX, why does it make sense that you rent the GPU side and actually you go with NVIDIA? Well, because you actually mirroring, so you're creating a strategy who goes in the opposite direction of another player like Amazon, which, by the way, of course, Amazon has the space side that Jeff Bezos is
Hmm.
pushing forward is also like a competitor of SpaceX. This is to say, there are like industrial logic, of course, but there are also like alliances underneath that matter to understand, how you build like an AI empire, which is made as much as of strategy and business model as much as of choice of the
Hmm.
direction where you go, looking at the competitive landscape, right? So if you are a SpaceX, of course, you're also moving in a way that makes sense to you compared to where other companies like Amazon might come after you in the future in case they're gonna be do the same play that SpaceX trying to do where it tries to merge SpaceX and Tesla. Okay, of course we're dreaming here, right? It's more like super speculation, but again, it's also fun to do a bit of game theory in the long term. What happens if
Hmm.
Amazon then merges the space side of it? Considering that, for instance, Jeff Bezos has started as well another AI manufacturing company that goes around and tries to bring AI in all the processes. So, what if also in the coming years, Jeff Bezos does a similar move where it creates like a conglomerate which is fully vertical integrated and is going to be the anti SpaceX, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about again the data wars, Amazon has the biggest set of online data on sellers and consumers on everything that you can think of. They have access to the entire database from Whole Foods, everything that comes through Whole Foods, uh, company use of AWS. I'm pretty sure it's still the biggest provider of infrastructure
Yeah.
for cloud infrastructure. So, I mean, these companies, they are so well positioned to do a lot of stuff. It's going to be interesting to see because Elon Musk's whole thing is vertical integration, and you have Tesla and you have SpaceX. They've been successful. individually, you have X, which really all the revenue was thrown out the window to make it a data feeder for the other companies. It's a pretty big bet to just try to bring everything together into one and just hope it works. Um, it's going to be interesting to see
Yeah.
whether it does or not, whether it implodes or actually starts feeding everything else into one good ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. And you reminded me of another important point, which is as well. Yes, AWS. It's still like the key player. It
Mm,
has lost a lot of traction. However, in the last year and a half, is doing extremely well because a lot of its CI revenue is coming from a single player, which is Anthropic. And Anthropic is mainly training its models on Trainium, which is
yeah,
the custom chip from Amazon. And again, this goes back to Amazon is pursuing a strategy where the chip architecture that potentially competes with NVIDIA is going to be its main game. And if you're SpaceX, you vertically integrate by philosophy because that's what you do, because that's what
yeah,
Elon Musk has been doing his whole life. And where you see that SpaceX is not vertically integrated, is leveraging an alliance, then you need to think it through what's going on, right? And then you need
yeah.
to map out the competitive landscape and then go from there. Very interesting point. Yep. And not sure where do we go next because again, there are like a few other things that happen. And for instance, maybe another interesting point as well. Everyone was giving a little bit meta for gone right in the race. But interesting news of the last few days is that Meta also came out with Muse Code, which is AI coding agent. This is, as you can imagine, we can say this year, like Meta, Zuckerberg in general is not great maybe at setting a long-term vision, is more like a great fast following. And this is an example where, of course, Meta has seen that the most important player right now is in the enterprise AI space through tools like Cloud and Codex. And what you do, you try to actually come after the
Mm,
market with a lower priced option that though must be still quite effective so that you enter a market that is quite lucrative, makes sense at the moment, and it's a classic meta play, I would say.
yeah, there's so many ways to get yourself in front of, you know, even podcasts like this one, and it's release a new nobody's talking about you for a long time, release a new model, and everybody will be talking about you. Even if it's renaming your previous model. I mean, that's the thing. When you think of ByteDance, and they have 10 trillion parameters in training, and then you have Meta, and they're trying to go on the cheap side, and it's going to be the cheapest for million tokens. Ultimately, all that we truly care about is, can I use your tool to do what I want to do, and can I afford it? Because if something is cheap and it's bad, nobody's going to use it. If something has more parameters than anything else, but it doesn't have the right parameters that I need, the kind of training that I need, we're not going to use it. But it's those kind of things where that get you in front of the news and get you PR. So
Yeah,
it for me, at least with Meta, I'm kind of just sitting back and seeing what's going to happen. It doesn't sound to me like a change in where they're going. So we'll see.
yeah. We'll see. And a good point on what gets you pressed, because there was a meme, I think, going around in the last days where there was Sundar Pichai with a stick try to tell Gemini, please hack someone, because, now how do you get how do you get like a press release right now?
Oh,
You need to
that's funny. That's
that
funny.
was funny. I was like, and it's exactly the point, like you were saying, because there was also news in the last few days where there was a Meta model that was hacking few companies, and now it seems that the way you do marketing, like you go to your CMO and you say, hey, can you find a way to how we can hack someone. So the role of the CMO is becoming more how do we hack other companies rather than how do we communicate like a new model
Oh,
release.
yeah. No, it's true. And if not, you find some random thing that you're good at. It's like me saying, I am the best at running 50-meter dash between my house and the store. Yeah, because nobody else has done it. So I will be the best one at it. Um, so I think especially to everybody watching and everybody reading this eventually, w- common sense and some education is needed to be able to understand, okay, is this news just something they're throwing in front of me to call my attention, or is this truly meaningful?
Mhm.
So we'll see.
Yes. Yeah. The let's say let's call it what it is, right? The BS detector is the most
Yeah.
important thing that you can
Yeah.
develop.
Exactly.
Your point right
Exactly.
here, and that connects to another interesting news because again, a key point right now to like a bit connecting to what you were saying is also that um, right now you come up with the new model. You do the classic evals, marketing stunt, which has become there is still a lot of evals that are like quite
Yeah.
solid and it's well done. Of course, a lot of it, as we know, it's cherry picking, and so that connects to the Palantir latest pivot, which is Sovereign AI, meaning the latest release of Palantir has been all about Sovereign AI. But what does Sovereign AI mean? It means that you adapt an AI for the enterprise core, which means you need to build an AI system that can interact with the enterprise core without, number one, losing its own, let's say, edge by giving the core through the closed frontier model weights, something that I think we discussed quite a few lives back, which was the discussion. I think we already said like a few weeks back how right now, if you're an enterprise AI company, the most important risk for you is to give away your core, because you have your core, let's say your key data, interact directly with those AI models instead of filtering and putting it in buckets that then can
Mm.
communicate and runtime with those different AIs, be it open source, be it like an AI, a closed frontier model. So that's what Palantir is doing. Palantir, one maybe of the most interesting thing that they said during the release that was super interesting to me is as soon as Nemotron came out, the new one from NVIDIA, and Nemotron is an open source model. We explained in a previous live why NVIDIA is pushing so much right now on the open source ecosystem. But
Mhm.
long story short, the CTO of Palantir explained how they had a performance compared to like a very powerful closed frontier model by simply importing Nemotron on top of a sort of ontology core. Of course, everyone is trying to sell what they sell, right? So Palantir
Mhm.
sell like an ontological core, and then like a fabric, which is like a place where you can move your data around in different directions depending on the company use case. But again, what they were saying is with the right harness, your right memory layer, you can have the same level of performance without losing or like without risking your core, because now you're not having this data spill into like
Mhm.
a closed frontier model. And they saw, at least they were claiming that as soon as done it, they were actually having great performance. And that's
Mhm.
why, as soon as the news came out, if you remember of the Open Alliance letter where Jensen Huang pointed out the need for a Western open source ecosystem, I remember there were like a few tweets as well from top Palantir guys who said that we're gonna forward deploy uh, uh, as much as open source as we can. So they jumped on the boat as
Yeah.
right on. But this is the news.
Yeah. No, Palantir's they've been when everybody else is doing one thing, I feel like they keep finding these new routes to approach things. Yeah. Palantir is a really interesting organization. They've gotten a foothold in a place where almost nobody else is.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're quite good because they are also very good at selling, marketing, and they
Yeah.
define the category. Right? Again, everyone right now is talking about FDEs, forward deployed engineers, because again, we figured, okay, this is not the web, but this is AI. AI is going to develop first in an enterprise ecosystem. The enterprise is not going to be easy to have AI create value because we need
Mhm.
to go very deep into the enterprise stack and also understand the organizational complexity. So now to make it happen, you need very smart people who are like hybrids between software engineer, organizational expert, transformational consultant, and salespeople, right? They do like a bit of the discovery process
Mhm.
to understand where AI can create like a business value. So all those things combine. And that's where Palantir opened the space. So now, if they're telling you the new trend is sovereign AI, and they're all going into it, and they tell you that they're doing quite well, it means that everyone is going to be jumping into that
Yeah.
in the next like 2 3 years, right? So
Yeah.
that's good one. And another interesting news that goes more, and this, I don't know if it's even like a news that got a lot of attention from a public perspective. It caught my eyes, and I was sharing, the news as usual with you. It's a bit more on the geopolitical side because I think we are at the point where, as US decouples more and more with China, and part of it is also like the way how AI is become a defining force of this decoupling as well. Um, because of the infrastructure play that is underneath AI, and then what you can do with AI as well. It's interesting to see that right now the main provider of everything that enables the AI build out is actually coming from Mexico. So there's been a lot of discussions over the years. Can really US bring in-house a lot of the capabilities that are required to build the whole AI ecosystem and some of the core competencies that in the past were outsourced to, let's say, China. And the thing is, they don't need to because at the moment they already intensified the trade with Mexico at the point where Mexico right now has quadrupled the in 2 years. In 2 years, we're talking about 2 years is crazy. Like in terms of like because outside the pure numbers, there is all the ecosystem around that is developing, the whole economy and the ecosystem around that is developing. And again, Mexico is coming up as a main provider of data center hardware, which is contributing to the US build out. Very important note here, of course, is that 95% of this is
Mm.
still getting imported through Taiwanese silicon. So, of course, Mexico is almost like the middle point that does all the other processes. But a very important reminder that this is first the coupling wave, and also the even building the refining manufacturing infrastructure that enables the final output that goes toward the US. It's a very important signal, which tells us, if you ask me, who's going to be the most important partner and where is going to be the next dependency, not now, but in 20 years. And the new China for US, maybe it's going to be Mexico, but maybe we go too far ahead, right?
Yeah. Oh, that'd be interesting. That'd be interesting. And I mean, looking at the whole global ecosystem could flip on its head overnight. Especially with 95% of all silicon coming from Taiwan and everything going on with Taiwan and China. And honestly, I think having most of the silicon come from Taiwan is probably one of the biggest safety nets of Taiwan that the US is going to protect it no matter what, because the US has such a dependency on on that silicon and on Taiwan. So yeah, that is a whole different
Story.
conversation.
We leave it from for another time. Not sure if there was any other closing story that you wanted to touch on. Um,
No, I
that
think I think it's interesting to see the reshuffling that happens because there is risk in reshuffling, similar to what Grok and SpaceX are doing, what Google, Alphabet are doing. It can work out, and in 6 months or a year, 2 years, we'll say, man, that was a great move. Or if they're going to be taking everything back and undoing everything in 2 months because it's just a
Mhm,
mess. So
mhm.
it'll be interesting to follow what happens there.
Yeah, a great point. A lot of the moves that we've seen in AI in the last few years, every year and a half, we had to change assumptions, and that's absolutely true.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Again, just a year and a half back, we were discussing about I think like a year back, like Google being so back, and now we're
Mm,
discussing about the second code red,
yeah.
and then so many things and dynamics are changing, and plus again, the whole Chinese ecosystem is shaping up, vertically integrated. Still a lot of dependency on the Western side, but that tells you also that you're gonna have a hole in the market where if you don't have any longer the first buyer for many of the pieces that
Mm,
make up the whole infrastructure, there is a void that in some way is going to be going somewhere else where we see.
mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, there was a great session, Joel, as usual.
Yeah, this was good.
think,
Thank you very
yeah,
much.
we got a lot
Thank
of
you,
stuff.
everyone.
Every week is super interesting. The world of AI. Hopefully, with we made some clarity today. And ping us if you have any question, follow up, follow, of course, Joel on leadership in change. And you're gonna find the latest analysis on the business engineer as
Mhm.
well. And always glad to see you all.